Hello and welcome everyone to the Getting the Most Out of SmartList webinar. My name is Brandon Cook and I'll be doing just a super brief intro for Dawn today. I just have a couple brief housekeeping notes before we get started. First off, as you can see, we are using GoToWebinar today. If you look on the right side of your screen, you'll see the questions tab. If you have any questions as we're going today, feel free to drop those into that tab on the right side of your screen. We'll be answering all the questions at the end of today's webinar. Also, this webinar is being recorded. If you'd like to check out the recording, it will be uploaded to the resources page, evananddebbie.com, under the Ask the Experts tab. All of our recordings are located on the resources page, and also check out some of our upcoming webinars that we got going on this summer. We have lots of great stuff coming up. Also, this webinar today is for CPE, so if you like CPE credit, make sure if you on the chat tab on the right side of your screen, just leave your name and email address so you can get the CPE credit for that. So we'll go ahead and take a look at today's agenda.
If Dawn can click the right buttons.
Oh, it's okay, Dawn. So today's webinar is going to be an hour long. We're going to have just a few things. We're going to start off today with a brief intro, and of course, then we're going to move into today's demo. And also go ahead and read our longevity mission statement as well. Our longevity mission statement is really important to us, and it's the foundation of everything we do here at Longevity. Our mission here is to improve the life and success of our partners and customers by providing exceptional business application experiences that simplify, inform, and delight. And with that, I'll hand it over to today's presenter, Ms. Dawn Prismore.
Hello. So it's great to have you guys here. As Brandon mentioned, we'll do questions at the end of the webinar, just so, you know, if questions are answered as I go, then we don't have to pause and maybe go over. So we'll be respectful of your time, and I appreciate you being here. This is me. I'm Dawn, and I've been with Longevity for about a year. I've been supporting GP since version 5, when it was still the official Great Plains before Microsoft bought it, and I am the nerd who really likes the software. So this is a fun product for me to show, and I hope you guys get some tips and tricks that help your daily lives.
Hey, Dawn, looks like we're stuck on the what can we do with SmartLists slide.
I paused and restarted it. Are you seeing? Let me
go
back.
Looks like it's stuck on the screenshot of the slide.
Okay, so I actually just forwarded to this slide. Let's go back. Do you see me?
We're good. We're good to go.
Okay, so sorry about that. Now I understand why you were waiting for me to click. I was clicking and you weren't seeing it. So, okay, this is me, and we'll go forward. This is our agenda for today in a little bit more detail. So we're going to dive into some of the features that you use every day. So some of you may be familiar with these, but it may be new information. I hope that you glean some tips that will at least streamline your use of the product. So if you're not familiar with SmartList, I definitely hope that after this you'll dive in. It will save you time and is a great real-time query tool. So just an overview of what SmartList is. So I will go back and forth between the slideshow and the presentation, you know, actually walking you through the agenda. We're going to dive right in with native objects versus favorites. So let's get started. So if you're not familiar with SmartList in GP, if you click on your Microsoft Dynamics GP and then go to SmartList, that's how you open it. There are also shortcuts that can be added to your menu bar at the top. If you're not familiar with how to add and modify those shortcuts, be sure and grab our navigation tools and webinar. Sorry, I'm getting a little tongue-tied there. Come to our navigation webinar and learn all about that. Okay, so SmartList, when you open it, comes with some out-of-the-box real-time queries. So these are called objects. When you see the folder, you are seeing an object that has been created in SmartList to view into your data. And anytime you click on this, you are getting a real-time look at your data. So if we go into financial and we look at account transactions, I'm on the object for account transactions. If I'm missing something that I'm looking for and I go tell Sally down the hall that I need her to post that for me, I can come back and refresh it and it'll be there. So it is real time. Underneath the objects, you have favorites. So when you see an asterisk beside the favorite, that simply means that it's something that has come out of the box with your install of GP. And when you see the asterisk by itself, that is the default. So clicking on the object and clicking on the folder, which is the object, or clicking on the favorite with the asterisk beside it, those two will have the same results. So this is always going to be the default object. We're going to talk a little bit more about how we can manage that here in a little bit. Underneath the default object are default favorites. So if you're familiar with SmartList, you know that you can save favorites as you're going through and working with it. You can come in and you can do a quick search. So today I'm looking for a specific journal entry number. So I want to come down here and add, let's go back up to the top. I just scrolled right past it. Oh, I've already got it. I apologize. Let's cancel and go back. I want to come in and I want to say that my journal entry number is equal to 1. I want to see the beginning balances that were posted when I first came into the system. So it's easy to come in here and make changes, add columns, take off columns, move columns, add restrictions. What you need to know is when you click off of that favorite and then you go back to it, you're no longer going to see that restriction that you added. So the point in favorites is to allow you to save those changes. If this is something where you truly are using it as a go in and view your data and search for a single item, but this is related to what you're doing right now in this moment, then GP is not going to require you to save that. If it's something that you use on a regular basis, it's part of your month-end process, or it's something that happens at the end of every week, then you can go in and save a favorite so that you don't have to make those changes each time. You'll also notice that I'm clicking to expand and shrink my list of favorites, my Objects Explorer over here. Under SmartList and Favorites pane, you have the ability to turn that off. So if it frustrates you that you have to keep going back to find that, then you can go to your SmartList Favorites pane and uncheck Enable Auto Hide. So you have quite a few options in here. When you first open SmartList, mine you'll see has quite a bit of extra space out here to the right. That's because I increased the width. By default, when you open SmartList, you'll notice I can right click or I can go up to SmartList and then increase and decrease in my favorites pane. By default, it's typically truncated over here. So you're having to scroll back and forth. If you would prefer for that to open with more space, then you can increase your width. And as you noticed, when I logged in, it remembered that. So I had SmartList closed. When I reopened it, it opened the way that I had it last time. So if you prefer more space or less space, you have the ability to control that. Okay, so that's our native objects versus favorites. We're going to look at favorite security when we add a new favorite. So that will come up here in just a little bit. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. I'm awful at remembering to click through these. So as we looked at a moment ago, we can add, remove, reorder, and change the display name. So we're going to go in and look at the options that we have for our control over the columns that display in our SmartList. A lot of people don't realize that when you're in your SmartList favorite, you can go into your columns and you can change the display name. And you can do this on a default or a favorite that you've saved, but you can change these favorite names. So you don't have to use SmartList Designer or a SmartList Builder tool to change those and save them. You can do that and save that as a favorite. So for example, if I have an export that I send to my bank for payables transactions, for a safe pay file, if I have a report that I've created for 401k distributions for my employees in a payroll folder, then I can come in and make these display names match exactly what the specs are for that file so that they don't have to be modified once I export that. I can save that as a new favorite. So let's come in and we've got a file format from our bank or from our investors, and we're sending them a SmartList list of transactions for today. So instead of journal entry number They wanted that to be a shorter column heading to not take up so much space. And they wanted transaction date to just say date. So it's very easy for me to come in and type in what I want here. Okay, so you have full control over the display name of your SmartList. That's really helpful when you've got somebody that you're exporting data for and they're not in GP, they're not familiar with those column headings. You know, what the table refers to that data as may not be how you refer to it internally. So reference might not make a whole lot of might not make a whole lot of sense, but additional description might mean something to the person that you're sending this to. So you can control how you're describing the data without having to do that once you export it to Excel or send it to a file. So the goal is to do all of your manipulation here and then save it so that you don't have to do it over and over or manually manipulate it to add another step to your process. Okay, so once I've done that, I'm going to go up to favorites. And this is John's report. Okay, when I add a new favorite, so I'm adding a favorite under my object, right? I have a few options for how I'm going to save that. A lot of people breeze past this, and it's really helpful to keep these lists clean. So if you have users who perform different functions in the same area of your company, it's really handy to be able to help those users to set up their processes and streamline their processes without everybody else having to see each other's favorites. So sometimes that can get messy and then you're no longer streamlining, but you've got a cluttered situation that's hard to work through. If this is something that only Dawn does for John, then I can come in and I can make this specific to my user. So now when I add this new favorite, Sally is not going to see John's report. She's never going to be the one to send that to John. I can also make it company specific. So we have a lot of situations and a lot of environments where you have different favorites based on the company and the processes within that company. So that is an option as well. That will be everybody who has access to the company. And then of course, system means when I create this favorite, I now see John's report across companies, across users. Everybody's going to see it regardless of the company that they're logged into. Okay, we're going to make this specific to my user. And we're going to set a password because John has made it very clear that this is the format that he wants, and I don't want Sally to accidentally make a change and save over my favorite for John. So I'm going to create a password by just typing it in. As you can see, it's encrypted, so I'm the only one who knows what it is. And then from here, I can either modify that account transactions report. So if I had not changed the name, I could hit modify and just save the changes to current financials journal. Or in this case, we want to create a new one called John's report. Okay, so we're going to add this favorite. And immediately it will prompt me for my password because of course we're saving changes to the object. So now if I've said that favorite is visible to everybody in the company, everybody can see it, but in order to change these column headings or change the data that's in here or save search options, I have to have the password. Okay, the other thing that we saw in here is when we go to favorites. So first of all, password is obviously not available to the new person. You can change it and update it, but in order to do so, you have to know the original password. So it is secure. The other option that we saw here is add favorite and reminder. So I'm going to add a new object. I want we'll just select from it since I don't remember what I changed it to. So I want my account number to equal my suspense account. Okay, and I also want to look for a date. So I want my date to be between. This is another thing to note. You're not stuck with current date. That's just the default. So it is equal to is the default. I can change that, and current date or enter date, sorry, is the default over here, and I can change that. So in this case, I want it to be between the beginning of the month and the end of the month. So I want to know anything that is hitting my suspense account and it's happening in the current month. So this is something that I'm going to monitor on a regular basis. Okay, so we're going to click OK. And we can see we have one journal entry that hit our suspense account. So now I want to save that as a favorite. And I want this to be visible to everybody in the system. And, oh, we don't need to change the password. We do want that to be password protected. But in this case, I also want to add a reminder. So I can add a favorite, or I can add a favorite with a reminder. The difference is that when I add the favorite with reminder, it still adds my favorite here. That part is the same, but it also gives me the ability to add a reminder. So if I have records greater than 0, I want it to show up and tell me, because I don't expect anything to hit this account. I've actually used this as a red flag account in my setup. So I've put it where required accounts are that I don't expect to have anything post to them. And I want to know if I have any transactions hitting that account. So now, oh, let me get to my other GP window. So now on my home screen, you can see that I have a reminder. If I don't have anything that matches the criteria that I've set, so I told it that I wanted to know if there was a record, if there were records, anything greater than 0, then it won't show here at all. But the minute that I have something that meets that criteria, it will show up, and all I have to do is click it, and it will bring me to the SmartList that created the reminder. Okay, so you can do quite a bit just with the native search options and favorites. So there's a lot that you can manage just in this favorites window that a lot of times we just, breeze past because we're busy trying to get things knocked out. Pardon me, I have a frog. Okay, let me go back to my slideshow. Let's see where we're at here. So we are going to take another look at, we talked about what we can do in favorites. We're going to go to columns, and I'm a little out of order with my slideshow, so forgive me. I moved it around a little bit, and now I'm paying for it. One thing is when you come into your column display, so all I did was click on columns, I can go back to the default. So the order, the default order, we can revert that. We can also remove columns, and we can add columns. You can use your control or your shift and add more than one column at the same time. So I'm adding columns across the top for my display. Okay, so now I have the pieces that I need. I can also clicked on the wrong button. If I go to columns, I can also reorder those. So debit and credit, I want those to be where they are, but I really need the description to be down here. The other thing to note is when you're adding new columns, we'll often get a call, where somebody is missing a column that they know is available. It exists in another favorite, or they've seen it before and they're just not seeing it to select from here. If you change your available columns, click on that drop down and choose all columns, then you're able to see everything that's available for this SmartList. If it is then not visible to you to select, that means that it's not currently included as the table structure the SmartList is built on. So these are built on views and tables, and it just means that it's not part of the default. And we will talk about how we can expand that here in a bit. Okay, so now I'm able to see all of my columns in my search. It is not searching just in the left to right as search fields do in some areas of the system. So it is actually searching the entire field. So when I find, it is looking all the way through the field and showing me everything that is available. So that's all we've got that includes name. All right. I keep wanting to say any questions, but we've got, we have questions coming at the end. Okay, so we're going to stop and it's a good point for a poll. We'll just start with, do we need CPE on this webinar? So take a breath and throw a poll question in there. All right, we've almost got everybody. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the poll. I'm going to give you, we'll count of 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, our poll is closed and everybody voted. Thank you very much. All right, so we've talked about our favorites. We've talked about our columns. Of course, we talked about refresh. If Sally went down and posted that journal entry, I can hit refresh and now it's going to show. And let's talk about what we've got in our search options. So the first thing to note is when you come into the search window, you have 4 options to search. There's not a way to add additional search restrictions in this window. You can use SmartList Designer to add restrictions to a new report. We'll talk about that in a bit. And if you need abilities that go past that, then you can always look at SmartList Builder, which is an option to purchase. SmartList Designer you own, SmartList Builder is a purchase. So it's kind of how you step through that process to decide what you need. So you have 4 options. One of my favorite features is the field comparison. So if I am looking for something where my description matches my vendor ID, where my PO number matches my distribution reference, there's so many different things that are seemingly random that come up that's a very helpful tool for. So here, if I want my account number to match another field, then I can go in and find another field to compare that to. So you're not limited to just text or just dates. You have a lot that you can do in here. Match case is, of course, an option for you if it's a text field. So if you've typed in something that you want to match the case on, then that box will wake up for you. And then we talked down here about the dates, but I really want to spend a minute on this because a lot of people will miss something that's just really helpful here. Instead of doing enter date, if you use those beginning of month, beginning of period, beginning of quarter, if you use those dates that are predefined, then you don't have to come in and modify your search every time you run this. You can, save some time there. So just remember that you have a lot of options when it comes to dates, and they've actually just added a couple more in the last release. Wendy likes to remind us that was one of her suggestions, and she is right. So when you go out and you enter those suggestions on the website, they do go there for the next release changes. So it's the most requested things that make it into the product. So prior month, next month, prior period, and next period, those are new and super helpful. Maximum records. So a lot of times you'll come in and you'll run that default smart list and you'll find that it stops way before it's finished going through the data. It's because it's searching through your data, and the minute that it hits 1,000 records that meet the criteria, it stops. So if you want to expand that so that it will bring all of the records back, you'll need to max out that field. We're going to talk about a couple of options to streamline this even here in just a moment. Our search type, match all or match one or more, is also something really helpful to remember. So if I know that I'm out of balance, let's say I'm trying to balance my subledger and my ledger, and I'm off by $25.43, then I can come in here, I'm going to clear all of these, and I can say that my debit amount is $25.43. And my credit amount is $25.43. If I leave this on match all, I'm not going to get any records because you'll never have a line item in an account transaction, with both a debit and a credit. But if I change this to match one or more, then it will go search all of the debits and credits, and it will find my $25.43. Okay, of course, I picked a number that we don't have an amount for, but let's see. I had another thought and it left, so it'll come back. We'll go back to search. You noticed I hit clear all to easily clear all of these search items. You can also click to columns here. You're getting to the exact same place that you do if you click the columns button above. It's just a shortcut. And then order by. If I click on a heading in my smart list, it will sort by that heading. But if I need to define a tiered support, then I can use the order by button and come in and add, I want to sort by description and then by account number. And then I want to sort by batch number, which of course that's an invalid sort, but you've got the point is you can sort by as many fields as you need to. Okay, you have the option to change that from between ascending and descending. So you have full control over how this sorts within this window. Remember that if you make changes in here and you don't save a favorite, that you'll make those changes next time you need that as well, which may be fine. It's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so I don't want to save my changes. All I have to do is click off of it. Note, it did not ask me if I want to save my changes. So you have to remember to go up to favorites if you want to be able to save your changes to your favorites. All right, let's pause and see where we're at in our PowerPoint. Okay, so we talked about our display name. We've added, removed, and reordered. And we've talked about all of our search options. And we've covered our favorites. So we've added a reminder. We know that we can set a password. We know that we can change who it's visible to. And the security we talked through. Okay, so now that we've talked through how to do all of that on an individual SmartList level, let's talk about how we can make that easier on a global level in the system. So in SmartList, I have all of these defaults, right? But whoever defined these defaults does not know my organization, and the defaults just don't make sense for us. We're having to change every single default to match what we need internally. And instead of going through all of these favorites and changing those, I want to be able to do that in mass. So if I go to Microsoft Dynamics GP and I go to administration, keep in mind that this is something that is at the system level. So anything under system means it's going to affect everybody, everything. Doesn't matter what company, it doesn't matter what user. So SmartList options are under the system setup palette, which means you have to have permissions for that. So you may have somebody in your organization who's in charge of setup and global administration, and you might just need to go and have a conversation with them, maybe sit down and walk through this together. I'm going to pause right here. We're going to do one more poll question to give the talker a break for a drink. All right, so let's figure out how many search options we have. All right, looks like we've got almost everybody. We'll do another countdown and we'll dive back in. Oh, we're done. Excellent, and everybody got it right. That's always exciting. Okay, so in administration, and thank you for the drink break. In administration and then SmartList options, you can see that we have a lot of the same options that we have in our individual SmartList, but this is setting those defaults. So if it has the asterisk beside it with no other words, then we know that that's the system level default and it can't be modified. So here is where we can change that. In my accounts, I always want to see my main account segment separately. I do a lot of searching on that. It would make it really easy for me to be able to include that. We also want to know the date that the account was created. That's really important for us. We manage that and monitor who's creating accounts. So those are things that are important to me and our organization, and everybody who does any SmartList, they're probably going to want those fields on there. And oops, if I hate changing that maximum records field, I can come in here and set that now. So for every SmartList object that you have, this is probably the #1 complaint that we hear. And just so you know, that's built to reserve your system resources. So if you use SmartList extensively and you have a lot of people doing queries, you might want to have it stop at 1,000 records so you can add your restrictions onto it in your search criteria and then have it search your full data set. Or you might really want it to search the full data set every time. So this is how you control that. Okay, so you're choosing the category. That's our object. and then you're setting the maximum and you're choosing the columns and you're putting them in the order that you want them to be in. So again, you can do all of the things that you can do in SmartList. You can also revert this to the default, so it'll uncheck the boxes that I checked. Nope, I really just wanted my account index on there. Okay, and then the other thing that you can do is you can change the default go-to. We're going to look at the go-tos here in just a moment, but when we do, keep in mind that you have a default in your list of go-to options. Let me just check here real quick. Okay, so I've got somebody telling me it's stuck on the poll. Hey, Brandon, are you seeing me go through the windows?
It looks like I'm still on the poll question right now.
Okay, let's see what I clicked wrong. Thank you, Dina. Okay, are you seeing the screen now?
Yep, we're back.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me back up a few clicks. So in administration, and then SmartList options. So we're selecting our SmartList. And one of the things to note is if you add a new SmartList in SmartList Designer, it will always fall to the bottom. So you'll notice these are not alphabetized. Just something handy to know, because when you look for it, it may appear that it's not there, it's just at the bottom. We can change the default go-to. The default go-to is what happens when you double click on a record. So we're going to go play with our go-tos here in just a moment. But if I highlight a record in my SmartList and I double click on it, the window that it opens is my default go-to when I double click. I can change that. So instead of going to view, I want it to actually open my detail inquiry window. And then my maximum records, I want that maxed out. I want it to search my full data set for this one every time I run this report. And then I want it to include my account index. So I can move those around, reorder those, and I can scroll down and select from any of the available columns that I have. So what we have a lot of people do is they'll sit down and they'll play with their SmartList and just make notes of the changes they'd like, and then go sit with their system administrator and make those changes, since this is a system-wide window. Okay, and then we can revert that back to the default. The search defaults, we can tell it that we always want it to be case sensitive. Of course, then the user is still able to uncheck the box, so it's just defaulting checked or unchecked. And we can also tell it we don't ever need it to be case sensitive. So we're just going to uncheck that box, and it won't, it's not anything that will bother or prompt the user. Okay, password here. So when I am creating a favorite, I can set a password for my new favorite. Here, as the administrator, I can say, I don't want anybody to be able to modify a SmartList favorite unless they have this password. So this is a system setting that rolls down to all of the favorites in the accounts versus the individual being able to set their own password on their own favorite. Okay. The other note that I made was that if you add a new SmartList, it'll be all the way at the bottom. Can't remember if I did that before we got the screen back. All right, Dina, thanks for that. Okay, so now if we go to our SmartList and we look at accounts, you can see down here at the bottom that my maximum records is the maximum. So I don't have to do that every time. Okay. We'll close that. We'll also look at our default go-to. So now it's taking me to the detail inquiry with that account displayed. So our go-tos are also very helpful. If we click on any record in any SmartList and click on the go-to at the top, if it is the default, you'll notice it's got a line underneath it. The other two I can select individually. So the default, and I apologize if I forgot that if we set that default in the system setup, if we change that, it doesn't change the default view here. So it's a little bit misleading if you've changed it in system. But if you double click on a line, that's the default go-to, detail inquiry. And then if you click on it, you can also then go to view and look at that account, or go to the summary option. So those are your go-to options. Let's go back and check where we're at in our PowerPoint. which means it's a good time for another poll question. Oh, Dawn can click. Okay, there's your poll, and I'll get us back to our slide. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so now I know that I can share that and then hide it. So yes, we can absolutely add a password to a favorite to protect it. Okay, so we've talked about how we can change the system defaults. And did I go too far? Nope. And then we can drill into a selected record. So that's our go-to. If I'm on a vendor, look at all the options that I have. So every SmartList object has its own set of go-tos, and you'll know what they are by clicking on that drop down at the top like we looked at. Okay, the next thing that we want to look at is what we can do with our SmartList when we're finished. So we've got everything the way we need it to be, and this is not just a view only. There are other things that I need to do with this data. So I want to go look at what I can do with the data once I've got it the way I need it to look, formatted the way I need it to be. And forgive me, my words just aren't coming today. Okay, I think it's because I am used to talking to people, so I'm gonna put a little stuffed animal in front of me next time. All right, so we're gonna click on a record here, and then up at the top we have print, Excel, and Word. The important thing to note about print is however I have this displayed in my SmartList is how it's going to print. So if I expand this and we look at one that has a little bit more data, you can notice right here for life insurance, oh, it went away on me, accumulated depreciation, it doesn't complete that because I don't have it, I don't have enough width in my field to display the full description. You can click, see the symbol, the two-headed arrow that it gives you, double click on that just like you would in Excel to resize those columns. When I do that, so now I'm showing my full description here, but I've lost my full heading for my account because my account numbers aren't wide enough for my description. So I can pull that out to fix that. If I don't, I just need to know that when I print that, it's going to print as displayed. So you can see journal entry is journal ENT, right? So it's important to know if you're actually going to use the print option, which most of us probably send that to Excel, but if you need to just print a quick list, this is very helpful. Just know that you want to manipulate your column headings and your column width before you print it, because it will print whatever you have on the screen. The other thing to note is it is going to auto wrap. So it's a portrait view and it's going to auto wrap when it runs out of space. So it's just good to know the options that you have for printing. Okay, you can also go to the printer or you can export it. Export is honestly very rarely used just because you've got the Excel option, but you do have the option to export it to a text file, tab delimited, comma delimited, HTML, XML. So if you don't need to manipulate it, once you don't need to send it to Excel and then manipulate it, you can just export it directly to one of these formats. Keeping in mind that if you're in this print, it's going to export the way that you have it displayed on the screen. So it applies to all three of these options. Okay, we're going to go to Word next because it's a pretty quick one to cover. And we're going to stop it early. It will go ahead and pull it up for us. So Word isn't used very often, and when it is, it's typically used with, in my experience, it's not used very often. And when it is, it's typically used with the Word templates in GP, which we're going to look at here in just a moment. But when you do export it, there are several places where it might be helpful. A customer's asking for a specific list of data. A vendor wants a specific list of the apply records. You can export it into a table and then include a little letter about, what it is that you're giving them and why. Or you can use the mail merge feature that we have, which is the letter writing assistant in GP. So know that you can export to Word, and then also keep in mind that there's another more functional option for that as well. We're going to cover that here in a moment. I don't want to save that. Let's go to everybody's favorite. We'll click on Excel. And again, I don't have to let it run all the way, so we'll just stop that. When we send it to Excel, it will resize those columns for us. So we don't have to worry about the column widths when we're sending it to Word or Excel. It will take care of that for us when it exports it. And when it sends it to Word, you'll notice I had the icons for my mouse that indicated that it was table format. So it exports a table into Word, and then it exports directly into Excel. Let me just make sure we don't have any red. Okay, make sure I didn't have any display issues after that last poll. Okay, so once we get it to Excel, then of course we can do anything that we want to do with it. So we can manipulate it, we can add subtotals, we can, put formatting in, and we're also going to look at a way that we can save time there. Okay, so we've looked at how to print, we've looked at our options, we know we need to resize our columns, we know that we can send it to Word, or to Word, and then we know that we can send it to Excel. The other button to note, and it's not in my slideshow, but if I've just come into account transactions and I know that I have search criteria that I'm going to put into it. So we talked about how we can maximize the records to have it show, more than 1,000. And we also talked about how, sometimes it will take a little bit longer depending on your resources and your data set. I can use the stop button to stop it. So I don't need it to complete the search because there's stuff that I need to do in there first. That's what that's for. And I can go add my search, I can add my columns, and then I can refresh it if necessary. Okay, so we've looked at all of the options across the top except new, which will come in a moment. We've looked at, import and export we'll look at here in a moment. And then here under SmartList, you're just getting a different way to get to those buttons. So instead of using the ribbon across the top, you can use SmartList, drop it down and select what you're looking for. Export solutions is where we're going next, and we've already looked at favorites pane. Let me verify that, make sure I'm not lying to you. Okay, so we looked at our print and export options. Oh, let's go touch base with our word letters first. All right, we're going to go down to sales and we're going to look at our customers. And you notice the minute that I click on customers, I change, and now I don't just see Word, I see the letter merge. I can prepare letters using the mail merge, which is part of our general navigation class. So again, or webinar. So again, please join us for one of those. We get a lot of rich information in there, but know that I can take the SmartList and I can combine the functionality between SmartList and mail merge, the letter merge in TP, and prepare out of the box letters or prepare custom letters. Okay, and then quick export, when you see that, is just, I just want to spit it out to Word. Okay, I'm going to speed myself up just a little bit because we're getting close to the end, and I want to make sure that I can go through the export solutions. It's a pretty powerful feature. All right, let's make sure. Yep, export solutions is next. Woohoo! Okay, so we talked about how we can export to Excel and then manipulate the data once we get it into Excel to apply formatting and to sort and filter and all of those great things that Excel has. But I don't want to have to do that every single time I work with my SmartList. If I'm doing the same thing every time and applying the same formatting, there has to be a better way, right? Well, there is. We are going to look at sales line items. And you can see that I have created a favorite called My Invoice Lines. And I have all of the columns that I need. I have all the data that I need, but Ralph really, really likes this report in blue and in a table format and with some other minor changes to it. And I have to do that every time I send it to him. So what I did was I went to Excel, I did a quick export, and I recorded a macro in Excel when I went in and made all those changes for him the last time. Then all I had to do was clear the data out of the Excel file and save it as a macro enabled Excel file. So we, of course, aren't going to spend a lot of time walking through how to record macros in Excel, but when you go through to save it, you would save it as an Excel macro enabled workbook. Okay. Now I've already done that work, and I'm going to come into SmartList, and I'm going to go to my export solutions, and I'm going to create one called My Invoice Lines, browse out to the file that I just saved. And when I created my macro in Excel, I had to give it a name. Now I'm just telling it which macro in my Excel workbook I want it to run and when. Do I want it to run before it exports the data, or do I want it to run after? Once I've done that, all I have to do is come down here and tell it which of my smart lists I want it to apply itself to. So I can use this macro for multiple smart lists. If I'm doing the same manipulation, it doesn't have to be 5 different macros. Okay, so we're going to save that. Now, when I go to Excel and my invoice lines, then we are going to let it run all the way through so that it can get to the macro point. Now it does all the formatting for me. So it put my heading in place, it added my table format, it's the colors that he likes. So it's made all of those changes. You can do dashboards, you can create tables and graphs and charts and KPIs. So all of those things that you're having to do right now manually, you can record into a macro and have GP do that work. GP and Excel can work together and make that happen without you having to do it. That is probably one of my favorite features. Told you, I was the nerd. I like the system. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about, and I think we're right on time, so that's pretty exciting, is SmartList Designer. We won't spend a lot of time on this, so if you want training on it, we are happy to do that. It's a pretty fun tool to train on and start to use, but we want to make sure that you know that it's there and available to you. Okay, so we have SmartList objects. We've talked through how these folders are objects, and if any of you are using SmartList in your environment, then you've probably already noticed that you don't have one called AP Distributions with Apply. This is an object that I built using SmartList Designer. So if I'm on Financial and Account Transactions, and this is great, but like we talked about, I went to find my new column and it doesn't exist in this object. Then I can click on New and it will create a new smart list for me, and it will start me out with the columns that I have displayed over here as available columns in my new smart list. Okay, and I can tell it where I want it to put it. So I want this one to be down in sales because I'm specifically going to work with sales, or I want it to stay in financial because we're looking at the account, all of the account transactions and not just the sales accounts. Okay, now you can see over here to the left, I have all of the tables available to me in all of the series. So you can see the reason we're not going to spend a lot of time in the 1-hour webinar is because there's a lot. So you now have access to every table within GP to be able to add and link to your existing smart list. Now you can go get those columns that you need. The one thing that I will caution, the one word of caution I will put out there is make sure that you validate. So if you're building it, if you have somebody who's building it for you, if you have a great report designer, make sure that when they hand it back to you before you publish the data that you validate. You want to make sure that you've got all of those relationships linked correctly, because it is a very powerful tool, but you want to make sure that it's returning the data the way that it should, and part of that is having a knowledge of how to link those tables. So okay, so we have all the tables in the system. The other thing to note is you have all of your ISVs. So if you use project accounting, if you use McCorma, if you use multi-entity entity management, you can build smart lists that are based on existing smart lists, or you can create your own. So the one that we started was based on the smart list that we were on. But if I click up to just financial and I click new, now I have a blank slate. So if I have a brand new smart list that really isn't related to any of these back here, I can start fresh. So you have access to every dictionary that has tables in your company databases for GP. So human resources, project accounting, all those examples that I just gave you, and any other ISVs that you have, as long as they are in your company databases for GP. So the one limitation, if you will, or when you've outgrown SmartList Designer, is when you need to reach out to a separate database. So you've got a warehouse database that is not part of your GP data. Then you need to look at the product that we talked about that you can purchase, which is SmartList Builder from E1 Solutions, and that will allow you to take that next step. But if you're needing to just combine tables and get additional data within GP, then this is perfect for you. You also have access to views within the databases. So this is really helpful because, get that to expand, a lot of these out of the box smart lists are based on views. So now I can say, listen, I really want to combine this smart list for customers with this smart list for my sales line items, so that on my sales line items, I can also see some of the customer data. Maybe there's a comment on each customer card that's really important when you're looking at sales. So now you can do that, and you can utilize their views to save some time in that. Their views are named exactly the same as the smart list. So if you're looking for the smart list for customers and the smart list for sales line items, they are here for you. Customer address, customers, customer items. So these are all your smart lists. Now you don't have to go reinvent the wheel to link data across your smart lists. Okay. And then once we've done that, you have a brand new smart list. I left mine, this was actually when I worked on for a customer, and I left mine with all of these additional columns just to show you that if you want columns to be able to choose from, you need to make sure you add them in your SmartList Designer build, and then go use your SmartList options in system setup that we just talked about a few minutes ago to uncheck all of the columns that you don't want as part of the default. Okay, so we're at the end of our time, and I think, oh, I'm sorry, I do want to go back. Let's show you one more quick thing in SmartList Designer. Your linking tables, you can also apply filters. So we talked about the search only having 4 options. You can come into SmartList Designer and say, I only want this group, or I only want this range, or I only want this class. So you don't need as many search options out here. Just remember that this means that you've got a limited smart list, so you want to name it accordingly to make sure that people aren't looking for data that's not going to be there. All right. Once you do that, it shows up over here with all of your other smart lists, and you're ready to go. And I think we're ready to open it up for Q&A. Oh, let me add our last poll question, and then we'll do the Q&A. All right. Brandon, do you see any questions?
Don't see any questions right now.
Okay, so if you guys have any questions, be sure and put them in the question section, and we'll get those answered. And otherwise, I really appreciate you being here. I hope you get in and play with this tool. It's an exciting tool. All right, and everybody got that right? That is perfect. SmartList Designer is correct. All right, we're gonna hang out for a few more minutes. I wanted to end in time for any questions, and if not, you get a few minutes back in your day. Get to break for lunch a little early, I guess. Brandon, are we able to open up audio, or is it just chat questions?
It's usually just chat questions.
Okay.
Also, a quick reminder, if you guys want CPE credit, go ahead and leave your name and email in the chat, and we'll make sure we get that to you.
We appreciate your time. I hope you guys have a great afternoon. Okay, so we've got Sherry for CPE.
Cool. Thanks, Sherry. All right, I think that's everybody. Hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.